But it's the approach, right? If you go in chaos and anger, nothing's going to get done right because I'm fumbling, I'm scared, and you're yelling at me. And of course, it's going to be done wrong. But if you're just chill and we look at it, and it's like, okay, that's on fire. The fire extinguisher is there. Let's just get it. That's it.
Yeah.
You just got to be chill.
This is All About the Song.
Welcome to the 112th episode of All About the Song. I am your host, Michael McDonnell, and thank you for joining us. On the podcast today, we have Vanessa Vai. Vanessa is a sound tech. She works with bands, incredible bands like Stuck on Planet Earth and Dr. Draw, who was on last week's podcast. I met her working with Dr. Draw this summer. We did a bunch of shows and we had these great conversations before we performed or late into the evening. We realized that we had worked together in, like 2012 and all these other times. We knew the bands that we liked and had worked with. And we just, I guess I kind of just felt like we needed to put this conversation on the record because it was wonderful and I was right. It's a really great podcast and I'm excited to bring it to you today. We are in the middle of COVID-19, who knows, but we are going to do the intros and outros from my house for the foreseeable future. We were issued a lockdown in the province of Ontario, so we're going to stay separate. This conversation was recorded in the summer. It was stage 4. We had both been recently tested, so don't worry. I had a couple of messages asking about our safety. We were totally fine. We did things the best we could, and all things considered, I'm excited we had the opportunity to speak when we did. And now a quick word from our friends and sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Hailed, which is a coffee shop located at Yonge and Gerrard in the downtown Toronto area. If you are a coffee drinker, you must try Hailed. They are ranked consistently among the top 10 coffee houses in Toronto. Visit the store and support local Toronto-based businesses. Be sure to place your order at www.hailed.ca. This episode is also brought to you by Flickly. Thank you, Richard Atkin, friend of the podcast. We really appreciate your support for the Canadian music scene. Rich is the founder and CEO of Flickly, a premier video animation studio, working with large brands and enterprises across the globe. Learn more about Rich and his work at Flickly by going to the website flickly.com, FLIKLI.com, and connect with Richard Atkin on LinkedIn. So here we are, episode 112 of All About the Song, featuring Vanessa Vai. Thank you very much for coming in, for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Well, first and foremost, I got to say that COVID-19 has probably changed everything for you.
Yeah.
Where were you before and how has it affected you?
So before all this nonsense, I was doing shows every day, local, touring with the guys in Stuck on Planet Earth.
Yeah.
And we had a bunch of tour dates lined up for the summer, and then everything just screeched to a halt. Since March, I've done 2 shows that you were on.
Yes, that's right.
Little patio things, and that's like, it's not paying the bills, but at least I'm out there making noise with friends. And
absolutely.
Made me feel a little better, but yeah, I miss it.
Well, it's funny doing those 2 shows that we did, and it's with Dr. Draw, who just recently had on the podcast. What's been interesting is just the importance of those shows and sense of morale. Yeah,
I was looking forward to those shows for a week beforehand. I'm like, oh my gosh, I finally get to do something. Actually, Dr. Draw announced that show, and I messaged him, I'm like, hey, I'm doing sound for you. It wasn't a question.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm dying. Okay, I'm like, I'll bring all my mics. We'll do the usual. Been working with him a long time. But I didn't even give him a chance to say no.
Yeah, well, it's because there's just like nothing else going on.
Yeah, it's been a little depressing. You know, you spend 10 years in an industry and then in a blink, it's all just gone.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, what else can I do that will pay me even a fraction of what I'm used to making? Like, not much.
But also when you're able to do something every day
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you're not,
Yeah, it gives you way too much time to think. And I know I'm not the only one, like, from the tech side who's been struggling through it. Because, like, our gig family is our family. We see them way more than our siblings or our parents. And, like, we haven't been able to physically be there for each other. But everybody's kind of, like, united over Facebook and really, like, been watching out for each other. But they're all struggling. There's been a lot of like ODs and relapses and suicides. And like, it's very, very real. I'm in a much better position than a lot of my colleagues and I'm lucky for it. But like the repercussions of this are serious and long lasting beyond just having a show or not.
yeah, absolutely. But it also, what it has highlighted to me is the importance of the ceremony of the show, from getting the gig, looking forward to the gig, preparing for the gig, rehearsing.
Right.
All of those things that sometimes when you're doing so much of is just slots in the calendar.
Yeah, like when we're busy, it's tedious and we all were crying for a break. But now that we've had months of a break, we're just like, what, you want to rehearse full day? Sure, let's do that.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of, maybe as an industry, we took it for granted, like how much joy we actually get out of what we do. Like, yes, it's a job. It's a hard job. It's harder than most jobs because you have to please everyone. But we kind of forgot like how much we really need it too, you know? So all this time away is making people appreciate what we have a lot more. So those shows we do have, so much more meaningful. Like I almost cried that first show.
Oh my gosh.
Just because Eugene's such a magnetic personality, you know, and just being around him, you're just like, everything's going to be okay.
Absolutely. And he's a guy that plays like 250 shows a year at a minimum.
Yeah. We did TIFF one year and we did 3 shows in a night.
Yeah.
I wiped out in the middle of the street running from one show to the other.
But it's just like, you know, when you're just like, you're almost busying yourselves with this stuff that we love.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to take advantage of it. And that first show that we did at the Redwood Theater, afterwards, I think we all were just riding on a real high.
Yeah, well, we hung out all that night and it was just like, it felt like being on the road again where everybody gets together in one of the hotel rooms and we just drink and hang out after a long day of hard work. And it was like, that's the feeling I miss too. It's like not just the show, it's the family, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the artists I've worked with over the years have become the best friends I have.
Yeah.
Like absolute best. So that's part of it too, is like I miss my career and shows, but I miss my friends.
Absolutely. And there is something as well to be part of like whatever it is, but you're a unit and you're together.
Yeah.
And like that family environment or being on that team. Like I always find if I get asked to join a band or something like that, like it's being asked to be a part of this group.
Yeah,
and there
exactly.
might be like this dynamic energy that has been kind of honed for years. And you get thrown into it and it's almost it's like an honor.
Yeah, and it's like a band is like a relationship amongst 5 people. Like you're not just signing up to play music. You're basically in everyone's lives.
Yes.
So personalities are key.
Well, when I was young, like I started playing when I was 15 and like it involved a lot of effort from our parents.
Yeah.
And so you became very friendly with all of these people that were so integral to the ecosystem because they got you to and fro.
Right.
And we have fond stories of watching like our guitar player's dad like fall asleep during like the heaviest metal band sound check just because he picked us up from work. Like he went straight from work, grabbed us, put up 2 chairs together, passed out, and then listened to a doom metal band. You know, like work out the...
Were you in a doom metal band?
No, but you know
okay,
those like...
I'm just asking
You know,
because I
remember
didn't
those
think that
Supernova
was...
gigs that you would play? And it would be like No Doubt cover band, Queens of the Stone Age cover band.
Oh, dear.
7 doom metal bands, Linkin Park tribute night.
We've all got some Supernova stories, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh.
I did a little work with them in the early days just because, I'm like, experience. If you can stage manage 100 crappy bands, I can do any show.
Absolutely. So Supernova, for those that don't know, was a kind of like pay-to-play system where you would sell tickets to a show. The amount of tickets you sold got you the better slot on the bill. Right. 100% of the money that you made went to the company, the promoter. And it's funny, we were talking about this the other day, a group of my friends. I won tickets to see School of Rock.
Okay.
At a premiere or an advanced pressing for I think it was the Warner Music, whoever was distributing the movie.
Was it in Toronto?
Yeah, it was at Yonge and Eglinton. So the band, it was our second show. We sold 80 tickets. So it might have even been a premium ticket. It was $15 or something. I remember basically
in Toronto.
Pretty much we got, we were 15. We won. We got to see School of Rock, but we gave this organization $1,400. I remember sitting at the A&W at Avenue Road in Eglinton, just counting out just all this money and then just handing it over.
I think those guys were part of the reason I became a promoter in the first place, because I wasn't always the technician. So I started out kind of just working with a crummy band.
Yeah.
And I could do graphics because I studied advertising. So I made them look really pro. And we did this show, and I'm not going to name the promoter because he is active, but anybody hearing this story, you can guess who is the culprit. So we do this show. I decide, I'm not going to go through all these stupid promoters because we can bring people and we're not making any money.
Yeah.
So I call a venue. I'm like, hey, you don't know me. I want this date, and this is what I'm doing. They give me the date. I'm naive enough to let the promoter do door. He pays me at the end of the night. And I'm like, I did a basic head count and being real generous, but you owe me $300 more. Of course, he protests. I'm like, fine, walk away. And I decide I'm going to call the owner. So this is how I got anywhere in the industry. I need something, look it up. That's the owner's name. Looks Italian. I can yell at you. No joke. I call him up, and I'm like, hey, this is who I am. I did this show on this date. Generous. You owe me $300. This is what he did. And I'm like, you better do something about it, or I'm going to tell everybody that was there what happened and not to come to your bar. And I hung up on the man. I was mad.
Yeah.
So I let him stew and call back a few times, and then I answer. I'm like, okay, better be good. And he's like, okay, it's a cash business. I don't doubt that he ripped you off because he's special. I can't just pay you out because, that money's come and gone. But I'll give you your own night. And I'll give you all these extra bells and whistles, points off the bar. And I'm like, okay, I'll take that deal. But he stays the hell away from my shows.
Wow. What an entrance.
Right? Oh, dear. Yeah, I wasn't subtle. I don't like being pushed around. And as soon as I knew he pushed me around, I'm like, well, screw you. I'm going to the top.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing because that's not a normal, a band booking shows, especially first entry level. You're very kind of gonna get thrown around for the first 30 odd shows or something.
We got thrown around for maybe 10, doing those hot box, and more so hot box than Supernova. Anybody in Toronto knows hot box.
Yes.
Got some stories there too, but we're not gonna go there right now. So we had done a few of those, and handing over all the ticket money, getting dicked around on set times because, crappy band number 3 sold 5 tickets more than you. And I'm like, well, screw you. I don't want to play with 10 bands.
Yeah.
I don't want to compete for times. We're bringing people. I don't want to have them sitting around all day waiting for our time to go on when you feel like it. And we want to make some money.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, forget it. If these idiots can do it, how hard is it? I had the graphics part down, so everything else was just asking questions and figuring it out. And we actually made some money. And then I dumped that band because they weren't very good. But I'm like, hey, I've made some good contacts. Bands like me. I know how to structure a show where the artists actually complement each other.
Right.
Which was a big thing for me. Like those kind of showcase shows, it's just 10 bands. They don't care about genre. Even this like regular promoter shows, like they don't pay enough attention to pairing the right bands. They don't have to sound the same. Like I've done a show with a punk band and a metal band, and they each fell in love with each other's fans.
Yes.
And like, so it's not about matching perfectly.
But that
it's
chemistry is
complementing.
Exactly, complementing.
Yeah.
It's so important.
So I paid a lot of attention to that, and it was fun. But, you know, bands lie. So I'm like, I need to make money. If you tell me you're going to bring a certain amount of people, like at least get close. Don't blow smoke.
Yeah.
Because you get one shot. If you lie to me, we're done. Like, I don't want to eat craft dinner all week. This is a job.
Yeah.
So eventually I started like transitioning over to the tech side because I would stage manage all my own shows. My first sound guy was a bit of a slow walker, and front of house was far enough away that I'm just like, dude, come on,
Yeah.
like move it. So I would just start copying where he put mics and be like, okay, get off. Guitar player is still wrapping his cable. I already have your amp down. Like, so I would hustle gear. I'm like, I need to make money. We're going to stack the time I have with a lot of music so that you all get paid. But don't just stand there when you're done playing. Get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how many shows were at the height of your promotion? How many shows were you doing a week, would you say?
Well, I started with the weekly at Velvet Underground back in the day when it was still like a smelly, dingy goth bar.
Yeah.
But we did some great shows. So I used to do every Friday there before The Edge did their live to air night.
Okay.
So I had like a midnight cutoff. And then I would just go to the Hideout and spend all the money I made. So I was doing that weekly. And then eventually I picked up Tattoo Thursdays. So I was doing Thursdays and Fridays on the same block. And then doing a bunch of one-offs. Collective concerts was actually really good to me. I did a lot of one-offs at Lee's and the Horseshoe. Mm-hmm. They treated me like incredibly over the years. And I would always bring them quality shows. Yeah. And you've played them. Yeah. Which we discovered.
Yeah, which is so cool.
Right? Every time we hang out, we discover a different band that connects us.
Yes, well, and that's the thing too, is I think looking back on it and putting it together, there was we want to do a Vanessa Vai show. Like, it was something that you were, like, striving towards because, well, it's nice, but there was, like, you knew that, like, there was a quality.
Yeah, it's just attention to detail, really.
Yeah, but you also knew that you were going to play in front of people. Right.
Well, I think the difference is that I wasn't out there to just take money from all these people and have you earn me money. Yeah. Like, I wanted to earn my percentage because every promoter takes a percentage. So I made a point of like when you played with the Ruby Spirit, I tried to get that band for over a year. I never spent so much time trying to book a single act.
That's so funny.
For selfish reasons, because I love them. And if that record was to come out today, like, dude.
It'd probably make more sense than it did then.
A lot more. You were ahead of the times.
Yeah.
But, once I finally got the band I'm after, I, made sure I'm like, okay, I'm going to do you guys justice. Like, you're a pretty popular band in the city. I'm going to make sure I have another act who can draw and whose fans will like your stuff. Mm-hmm. So, and then that way I make my money too. I'm not just going to sit back and expect you guys to do all the work, which is what the rest of them kind of.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you end up with is just nobody really makes that much money. The show's not that memorable.
Right.
The thing is that sometimes what I've started to learn looking at in the small promoter type stuff that I've done over the years is sometimes what you really want to get is like the mingle. Yeah. You want these bands to meet and weave together and then their fans to hang out. Exactly. And then they start like dating or and just like meeting, and then there's a party. And I remember there was a summer in particular, I think it was like 2010 or something. And I saw these like 5 bands in this like scene develop. It was around 2 bands in particular, Dinosaur Bones and Still Life Still.
I know Branko, I was talking to him today or yesterday.
Branko's been on this podcast.
Yeah, the Serb Superb.
Yeah, he's so cool.
I love that guy.
It was really cool to watch like the scene that they cultivated, but I remember...
That was the year I moved to the city.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember seeing people at shows for like the first time and then like 2 months later, they were like on top of the fridge at a party. And everyone's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, Susie's there. And it was like, whoa, like I started to watch these people develop this scene and then become friends. And even now you see them
Together.
hang out.
Yeah.
And they're like,
but that's the difference. Some bands would be like cutthroat and not want to help each other. And those are the ones that haven't lasted.
Yes.
And then the other ones see it as a community. It's like, okay, let's help each other because we can only build so much in a day. But if we have double the amount of hands, we can build a much bigger house, right?
yeah.
So not everybody had that mindset. But, you know, the good people tend to find each other and stick together. Like the bands I've worked with are literally my family. You know, I could name a whole bunch that I'm sure you know very well.
Well, I think that that's like such an amazing thing too, especially from the position of a promoter, because your percent, like the reason why I don't think a lot of promoters stick around doing it is because they realize they're going to do so much work. And if they don't stay on top of it,
Yeah. It
They're
can
gonna
get
be-
away from you real quick.
and the percentage that you'll earn on a show that doesn't draw well or
You're going
no
to
one
lose
drinks that.
money.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I got to do this again tomorrow?
Right.
And then, wait, I got to pay rent on this? And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, I would rather not do this.
Well, I mean, yeah, like there's always a show that's going to bomb. And, you know, you just kind of have to plan ahead. You can't ever really count on just shows to pay your rent, although I got lucky for a few years.
Yeah.
But it did take a lot of work. It's like I was constantly on call. And then you have other artists who literally would hound you day in and day out and like call you names for not getting back to them. I'm like, dude, do you want to see what my phone looks like right now? I don't even know how many messages I've missed in the past week. Like, if you are really that insistent on playing one of my shows, come to one.
Yeah.
Meet me in person. Like, I would go to bands' shows to check them out live when I was first in the business. And artists would say to me, they're like, you actually came? You paid for a ticket to come see us and just talk at merch. Nobody does that. I'm like, well, first of all, I had to see if you were as good as your recordings,
Yeah.
which is always a mystery. But I'm like, yeah, like if I expect you to come to my show and pay for a ticket, I'm going to do you the same respect. And I think like the promoters of this world think they have all this power, but really they're just a gatekeeper. Most of them, I hate to talk shit, but most of them don't do any work. They email the venue, they secure a date, they put on a bunch of bands, and they leave it at that.
Yeah.
For me, the work never stopped. You know, it was like doing the poster, okay, doing all the listings, making sure the bands have copies, and then I stage manage, arrange gear shares, famous line, less gear, more party.
Yes.
So everybody would share gear, I would move everything, like they got treated like high-level musicians when they did one of my shows. I'm like, you spent your whole life honing your craft. Like, my job is this production. So, of course, I'm going to do everything I can do. I'm not going to sit by the bar and drink and grumble about numbers. I'm going to make it an experience.
Absolutely. And you have to like it. And back to bombing. Most of the time.
Those bomb nights, like, you know, you have bands who will be persistent with you. And I appreciate persistence because, like, that's the kind of person I am. So you give them a shot and then, you know, it bombs. And I'm like, you've been after me for a year and I finally give you a shot and you bomb. And I'm like, I understand, but I'm still really bummed because, you know, this is my job.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what was some of the last straw for me where I stopped doing it full time and started progressing into the tech side. Because I had already started doing like stagehand gigs for like those big staffing agencies, which was a lot of fun. My first gig was doing UFC. So you get called in there and I was on the video team. So, you know, you're just taking a bunch of video panels that are like 4x4 or 3x3 and snapping them together like Lego.
Yeah.
But it's very heavy Lego, dangerous Lego because everything's on motors and stuff. But it was a lot of fun because I'm a washed up athlete. So like the physical aspect of it was really fun and like the group team aspect because you had to work together or you're going to break things. So that was really fun. And I started doing a lot of those gigs and made my reputation as a hustler. Like, I'm small, but I'm not lazy.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, you know, I don't want to be someone's case pusher. for the rest of my life. And I was like this close to going to Trebas or something to like study audio. And some techs I know advised me, they're like, don't do that. You've been a stagehand for so long, like for the bit that you don't know, you're gonna spend way more money than you have to. Like just dive in. That was the advice I got. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, what could happen? I have Google.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. So I kind of started pushing my way in and trying to get little crummy audio gigs. And I ended up getting a job offer through a friend that I was not qualified for whatsoever. Even told them, I don't know how to turn that on.
Right.
But give me a couple weeks and I will. So I ended up hiring a tech friend to give me some lessons. Very solid, amazing tech. Like one of my idols in the city. Modest, nice guy. Wouldn't take my money after. I'm like, I had all this cash saved up. I was so broke at the time, but I'm like, this pile of money is for him teaching me.
Yeah.
And then came in, programmed my show file, did everything to like set me up for success and would not take my money after. And I was just like it was really touching. You know, I guess I made a decent impression over the years of promoting shows that he teched and he wanted to help me. So I'm like, well, now that you've done that, when I'm good enough, I'll do that for other people. And I have here and there. I love teaching people who are eager.
But it's so nice because it's like, that is no different than when you were promoting and you were putting in the extra attention and you made it better.
Yeah, I'm looking at like building a community,
Absolutely.
right? Because if I can teach somebody who I get along with, like you, for example, if you came to me saying, you know, I really want to learn how to do live sound, I'd be like, hell yeah, in an instant, because I know you're a good person and like you're very personable, easy to get along with. So I always need, you know, backups. If I double book myself, I have to replace myself on one of the two.
Yeah.
So teaching people who I know are cool and would be good with clients is also good for me because then I can call you up and say, hey, I need you to fill in for me. And like you get paid, obviously. But it's very community-based. Like I could never send a tech to fill in for me that I don't know or that like they're as good as me or as kind as me. And whatever, because, you know, clients need some extra attention.
Yeah, and also you don't want the feedback to be your friend.
Yeah.
You want them to be, so-and-so is amazing.
Like, I've been burned before where I sent a tech to do a show that was very simple, and it wasn't simple to them. And I'm, like, at a wedding, taking a phone call, and I'm like, dude, you promised me you knew what was up. So now I'm missing the event that I took a night off for in the first place.
Yeah.
And the band isn't happy, and they know it's my person, so they're not happy with me by default. So just be straight up. And like, even when I took that job I wasn't qualified for, I'm very straight up. I will always tell you, yes, I can do this, this, and this, but these things, not yet.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a problem too, is like people lie to get the gig, whether as a musician or as a tech, but it does you no service.
No.
Like if you go in and you fail, like that guy's on my blacklist. He will never touch my mics again. And like he's a perfectly nice guy, but if he was just honest with me, you know, I would have spent more time maybe teaching him exactly what needed to be done, even though it was all set up. We just had to turn it on, literally on. Literally on. I did it the day before. It was all just literally on. So, I mean, had I known, I would have said, come by.
Yeah.
I'll show you stuff, because I was there the day before. But he's like, you know, trying to upsell himself, but you just made yourself blacklisted.
Yeah.
Like, if you just be honest and tell me what's up, we can work it out.
When you started to feel comfortable teching, did you start taking on like smaller projects, working alongside people, or did you just jump in 2 feet?
Well, I kind of had no choice but to jump in.
Yeah.
So I got that gig at a venue. We'll leave that one out because that was not fun sometimes. Like the gear and the bands were cool, but the management was more of a restaurant brain than a venue.
Gotcha.
So that's all that needs to be said with that. So I was working there, and I started doing like backline teching for a pop artist named Andy, which we have a lot of mutual friends from that band.
Okay.
So I still remember when I got thrown into the fire, because for her band, I was just doing backline at first, helping the band set up and load in, easy peasy. So we're in Quebec doing her CD release, and I get a phone call from the local stagehands union offering me a full summer of Shakespeare in High Park.
Wow.
And I'm like, cool. At this point, I've been doing sound for 3 months. Decently well. I've had a few panics, but YouTube University is a great school.
Yes.
So I'd been doing it for
us
3
all.
months, and then I get thrown literally into the fire of a union environment. My first theater experience, because I'm a rock and roll girl, man. Like, I've always been in all black, aside from the stagehand stuff. Like, I used to tell people Johnny Cash was my dad and didn't acknowledge me because I wasn't good at guitar. So, anyhow. So I got thrown way into that and, learned real quick that theater personalities are difficult. And, it was all well known. I'm like, I'm from the music world. I don't know theater. You're going to have to explain terms to me if I ask and be patient and whatever. So, there was a lot of artists to deal with, aside from the cast. But I learned a ton. It's either do it or be replaced in that environment. So there was some times on that show. That's where I learned I'm allergic to bug spray. Almost passed out off the stage deck.
Oh, wow.
But so in that environment, they used to have 2 techs, and because it was 2 shows, right? So I had one show, and this other guy had another show. The other guy had some problems and ended up being replaced. So overnight, I'm told, well, he's not coming back, and they've decided you're doing both shows. And I'm like, great. So I needed to learn the hard script overnight for opening night, and it's no big deal. Right. So that was honestly one of the most stressful things in my life. And I don't read very fast, but I know as an audio person, if I hear it, it's like I read it 5 times.
Right.
So I downloaded this crummy app for my tablet. I downloaded the script, and I would read along and listen along basically for the whole night before opening night. And the next day I come in nervous as hell. Everybody's pressuring me. They're trying to talk, encourage me, but you're really just making me more nervous and go away.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get in my zone here with my script and stuff. So I'm in my chair and I'm finally ready. And the show starts. And I just remember this feeling of back when I was an athlete, I'm it's game time. You don't get a redo. It's not like a recording studio where it's oh, that was okay. Let's do another take. There's no second take. Mm-hmm. So I just remember being in it's the whistle blew and the ball dropped and it's time to go. And it was over in an instant. I don't even remember the actual show, but I remember doing really well. And the cast applauded me at the end of the night. And it was a really big moment for me. I was just after all that stress, seeing how thankful they were, just made it worth it. But then, the next day, one of the theater company people who was not a nice person, he's like, hey, I heard you were a rock star last night. Don't let it go to your head. 5 minutes to the next day's show.
Wow.
I'm we're about to start the next show, and you're going to do that? I'm I was feeling so confident. This is a hard show. Shut up and go away. Get out of my nook.
Well, it's a very different industry.
Oh, it is. And it's funny that the actors are often more cool than the staff, the behind the scenes people, because they're under so much pressure that they just everybody turns mean. And it's okay, if everybody just would relax. And a lot of it comes from the top is directors and, people designing the show. They want and need it to be a certain way, but it's the approach, right? If you go in chaos and anger, nothing's going to get done right because I'm fumbling, I'm scared, and you're yelling at me, and of course it's going to be done wrong. But if you're just chill and we look at it, and it's okay, that's on fire. The fire extinguisher is there. Let's just get it. That's it.
Yeah.
You just got to be chill.
Yeah, but theater people aren't like that.
No, I decided it's not for me.
But it's also really nice to see what a similar industry of live performance.
Yeah, like musical theater is
Yeah.
more tolerable on my end.
Totally. But also to see maybe something that you thought was really annoying with like a rock band scenario that you're in now, you can also go, well, it's not as bad as if I was doing Shakespeare in the Park.
Right?
And
That's true.
also sometimes...
I mean, it wasn't bad, though. It was just
different.
hard.
I recently worked with a group of actors as like a managing event producer for a bunch of actors, and it was one of those things where it's like, you know, if there was a fire, it was like chaos, and then somebody would just go in and you're like,
exactly,
we got this, don't worry. But it was like by like 3 days from now, it was like, I heard the warehouse burnt down. And it's like, no, it's just
a little singe.
Keep it down.
But I think the theater side of it helped me be more chill in my music endeavors.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I used to be a coach. I'm good at reading people and trying to figure out, okay, how are you going to hear me the best? I can say it 100 different ways. Which one is the way you're going to hear me? Mm-hmm. So I always thought I was good at that. Then you jump into theater and maybe not as good as I thought, but it helped me kind of develop those people skills a little bit harder, where I know now how to deal with more difficult personalities, because there are some, especially being a 5-foot woman, sound engineer, you know, 1 to 100 men normally. I get pushed around a lot, or attempted to be pushed around.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that doesn't last long.
No, it does not. You've seen firsthand.
You actually maintained really good professional opinion on something that we had to deal with at a live performance last week.
That was dumb.
Where I had the ability to just ignore the whole thing.
And lucky you.
I know, but I was so close to you and I could feel you kind of like radiating, but you just like, you didn't let anything go by you.
Yeah.
Or the show to be ruined. Like you just
exactly
kept that balance, and then when it was all done, you're like,
as
oh
much
my
as
God.
I was very frustrated internally and angry at certain things that happened, I didn't vocalize that anger or direct it at the person causing it. I still answered their questions. I solved their problems that were their problems.
Yes.
Not my problems, but I fixed them. And that's the key to it, is like just keeping your cool and working together. Because like
the band didn't care. Like,
No.
The band did care, but the band wasn't emotionally affected by it.
No, because they would have been if I reacted the way that any normal person would have reacted to somebody badgering them like that. If I was to have reacted the way I wanted to, or the way that I said it in my head, the show would have stopped.
Yes. And if everyone was really nervous, to go back to our little fire analogy, to put it together full circle, since there was pyro at the show, all we need is a bunch of nervous circus performers.
Right? Right? I make sure I know where the fire extinguishers are at all times during those shows. I'm just like, where is it this week?
I think I'm going to put a little baby one in my base case. There's 4 fire shows in a row.
Well, where the staff fell, I was getting ready to whip off my jacket in case I needed to like smother. I just wanted to hug them.
But it's
so that was my excuse.
It's so exciting, though, to have fire at shows.
Oh, it's the best.
But not to get too off on a tangent on fire. It's just
their fire show is amazing.
This is North Fire Circus.
Yeah.
And they do some unbelievable work and choreograph their performances to the music so well.
Yeah. They did fire staff, poi. They had like the light up hula hoops that they could write your name in and stuff.
Did they have the headbands? I don't know if they did.
I don't remember.
I
was very distracted the last show.
It was wild.
By my new best friend.
But the thing is that like being a professional and, you know, even having 2 gigs in the summer and having to deal with like other people that are flustered and frustrated and stuff, maintaining the balance of keeping it on the rails is like such an important thing. Well,
even like just doing these shows, I'm like, hey, what do I do in this scenario? It's hard to even remember. You know, like it is like riding a bike, but you know, I had all my little tricks I would use to help me fix things. And even Jeff had to help me on the first show. I'm like, something's ringing. It's not this, it's not that. I'm like, oh, this is what I do in that case. Just go through every channel and mute it until it's gone, and then you find it. But it took me a minute to remember my process.
Absolutely.
You know?
You got to do these things constantly or you just forget.
Exactly. From 2 shows a day to no shows in 6 months.
Yeah.
It's been a transition.
But the thing is that a lot of technical stuff with your profession is having like a system to figure out why it's going wrong.
Exactly. And we all have different little tricks, but...
Yeah. There's nothing worse than going to a sound check and seeing like all of a sudden the sound tech do like one of those moves where they lift their arm up over their head and pull out like a million wires and you're just like,
That sounds like the end of every Canadian Music Week. I actually have photos from every year that I've worked of the cable spaghetti covered in confetti afterwards and sludge sometimes.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that comes with the territory. It's not all lights and music. It's hours and hours beforehand and then hours and hours afterwards. So, like, the fans think, it's like, okay, show's over and this is just going to stay here. We don't know where this stuff comes from.
That's when the work begins.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Justin Bieber shows up with like a dozen full trucks. One of them houses a half pipe just in case he wants to skate or not. And, you know, we're just like the little Lego people. We take it off the truck and build the big Lego and kick us out before the show starts. Send us back when it's over.
Yeah.
But those things are fun. Like, as much as I like to mix every day, I still love doing those stagehand gigs.
Yeah.
Because you feel like an athlete again and like you get paid to lift heavy stuff. And like the staging now, the way it's designed is super cool. It can be like any shape. And I don't like the new trend of this VIP bar where they'll do like a big walkway off the stage around the bar so they can charge $250 and then back to the stage. But we got to build all that.
And it's amazing. I watched it at the Scotiabank Arena, them connect like Elton John's stage that was all LED lit. And I was just there as they like pushed it together and then it went whoosh, and a whole rainbow just kind of went through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it's
I
like,
wasn't on that one, but yeah, like we'll normally build the stage in one end while they hang the lights and the video. And once that stuff is off the ground, then 100 people come in and push this giant stage. It's pretty
amazing.
fun.
It's so cool. Now, I want to ask, you've started to work with Stuck on Planet Earth.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you've known for forever.
We probably started working together in like 2012. I started booking them back when I was a promoter. And yeah, we connected over the Italian thing because we're all wops from Vaughan. So I like to let my Italian out around them. And so I'd booked them for a while. And Andrew and I always kept in touch. And he got me some work doing like backline teching and whatever. So I started working with them because I was on a show at the ACC. Mm-hmm. Can't remember what it was, but I was doing stagehand. And he was the showrunner. So we hadn't seen each other in a while. I'm like, hey, catching up. I'm like, what's new with the band? And he's like, we're going to be doing some shows with Moist. And I'm like, well, our last conversation, you said, if and when you can afford someone, it's me. So how about it? And, it took a lot of like number crunching and working it out on their part because like as a newer signed act, like the numbers aren't there.
Yeah.
So, we worked something out and made it work. And like, I was happy to be on the road with them. Like, I love those guys so much. And I can just be myself around them, which is not always the case. Like, you have to, dress it up for the client sometimes.
Yeah.
But with them, it could just be real and honest. Like, they're my bros. I love being on the road with them. So we did a bunch of shows with Moist, David Usher.
Which has got to be so amazing.
Dude, high school me, she was going nuts. And he's still got it. He sounds better now.
Really?
Yeah, dude. Like, just, I don't know. His tone has gotten a little sandy over the years, but it's made it better.
Oh, that's cool.
Just a little bit.
Well, with Stuck on Planet Earth, though, it's got to be so cool to have started as a promoter promoting this band and grown. They've grown. They've been a band for...
since they were in high school with you.
Yeah, with me. Yeah. So, which I saw their first show, and I've talked to them on this podcast before, but also just watching them develop over time. Yeah,
and it's super rare to see any of the acts that I was working with as a promoter still lasting today. Because I started out 10, 11 years ago. So they were a band that, I discovered as soon as I came onto the scene because I was, a soccer player from Vaughan who blew their knee and it's like, okay, here music is now.
and they were totally out of Vaughn, and they had like Vaughn's support. They were
Yeah,
in like
exactly.
every newspaper anytime they played a show and all this stuff.
And they would work hard. Like you book them on a show and you see them promoting it. Like they're talking about it, they're posting about it, they're putting in the effort. Whereas like other acts I would book at the time, it's like, here's all the tools you need for us all to have a good night. And they literally do nothing with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's the quickest way to never get booked again. But thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, it's true.
But they've always been like super honest, hard workers, and original. You know what I mean? Like they didn't ever really try to be another band. And that was a challenge too. They were hard to match up on shows. But I think I liked that about it. I'm like, it's a challenge to find an act that complements you guys.
Yeah.
And I'm up for the challenge because I'm sick of seeing you play with a metal band or whatever, just as an example. I'm like, that show does you no good. Your fans come, they see you. Everyone else is not their cup of tea, and everybody leaves.
Yeah.
So working with them and seeing how like serious they were.
That was really their, not their rap, but it was true. Like their fans knew when they were playing, and like empty venue, full venue. As soon as they were done, empty venue.
They're super great at like engaging their fans and like becoming friends with them too. Like they've got a lot of diehards that came to all those shows we did in the winter with Moist through snowstorms and hail. Like I thought we were going to die on the highway in Ottawa. Like no joke. It was scary times. And these people follow them anywhere.
Well, I think it's really a cool and special thing that you started around this group in the same ecosystem, and now you're working with them.
Full circle. And like the promotion thing, I don't think was ever like what I was meant to do, although it was fun and I was good at it. But it was a journey to get to this. Like, and I think it is really special to be able to do sound for them because they are good friends to me. And like, like I always respected them as artists. So to be on their team on the technical side is like they're putting a lot of trust in me. And that's what it is when I'm working for a band, aside from a venue. Like if you're touring with an act or, you know, they hire you for a one-off, I'm part of your team now. Like basically you're a blind painter and I'm trying to paint your picture with you describing it to me. Like it's not my art, it's your art. I'm just the interpreter.
Yeah.
You know, so I try to like do as much research as I can, know the music as much as I can, and like make it as close to the record as possible. Hopefully better, because that's why we do live shows.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's so important because I think that it's a lot better now than it was before. But a lot of times venues would have their house tech and their main objective is to make sure no beer was spilled on the console.
Yeah. But like also I've been the house tech too, and it's got its own set of difficulties, right? Because you could never listen to all the bands you're going to work with ahead of time. Me knowing that, I give a little survey beforehand. So if it's a 5-piece band, I'm like, all right, are you lead guitar or rhythm? Do you play any boost? Do you have any really crunchy effects? Like, what are you going to do that might surprise me later? Tell me now, kind of thing. So I ask a lot of questions, and that helps me understand like where everything should sit. So if somebody comes with electronics, I'm like, okay, is this like background, lead, or like a rhythm style instrument? And they're like, oh, nobody's ever asked me that before. And I'm just like, well, dude, I don't know what your music sounds like. If it's me, I like electronics. I'm just going to crank it.
Yeah.
So if you don't tell me it's rhythm, it's going to be cranked.
Yeah.
And that's something I wish more artists would do. It's like, I'm a band, I'm playing a venue. This tech doesn't know me. I should be going in and explaining, this is our sound. This is like our dynamic. This is something weird that might throw you off later. If you don't prepare me, like I'm not psychic. And then stuff happens and then artists throw hissy fits and it's just like, dude, how was I supposed to know you're going to do that? And don't put the mic in the monitor grill if you don't want it to...
Feedback, yeah.
You know, like little things. So it's all about communication, right? Like in the grand scheme of what I do, there's a lot of people who've been doing it way longer, who are technically better than I am, but maybe don't pay enough attention or ask the questions.
Right.
So yes, you have more skill, but it's all about the details in this. So if you don't obsess over details like I do, I could maybe be better than somebody who's been doing it for 20 years just because I have my OCD attention. I just want it to be great. You spend your whole life learning how to play and writing these songs. Last thing you need is somebody in my position to be like, well, I think it should sound like this, and making it mine. It's not mine.
There's nothing worse than playing a venue or playing a gig at a venue and it's like a big time showcase or something like that. And you walk off stage and everyone's like, oh, it's so great, it's so great. And your manager's sitting there and he goes, all I heard was the bass. I didn't hear a single vocal and that hi-hat is so loud. Or maybe not even something so egregious, but it's just like, that's not what it's supposed to sound like.
But even like little things that could be solved with a few questions and a conversation, like that's what makes the experience of a live show. It's the subtleties, right? Mm-hmm. It's the space between the notes. And if it's just mud, you don't get the space.
Yeah.
Like, like even a sludgy metal band, you can hear between the notes, right? I like me some metal. But when you're doing a metal show, if the venue is empty, house guy, you don't need to crank it and tell them to turn down their amp. Just because it's metal, you don't need to go deaf.
Yeah.
Like if I need earplugs, so do you.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
No, you're absolutely right.
But mixing an empty room is like the hardest thing, because you do a sound check and like you have to check really loud because it's empty and you want to find all the things that might ping off and peak. But if you sound check at a normal volume, you're not going to find them until the room fills up and you have to crank 20 decibels and then feedback city.
Yeah.
So people are always like, why do you sound check so loud? I'm like, so we don't have this shit later. Hello.
It's totally true.
Anyway,
so,
I could talk gear all day.
That's okay. And this is so much fun. But I want to ask if you know, or if there is, what's next for you?
Well, considering concerts are a big question, I've actually been attempting to enter the recording world. So I've turned my home into a bit of a recording studio. I mounted some beautiful monitors I picked up, got a new Mac Pro. I bought myself an X32, and I'm just kind of diving in like I have with all the other things. It's like, I think I might be good at that, so let's take a dive. Wow. So I've, built a little riser for my drum kit and where I'm going to record amps and things, and the bedroom's the control room. And, my mixing skills is always what's gotten me by, even before I learned all like the hardware aspect of things. Once I got behind the desk, I could mix.
Yeah.
And that saved me. So I'm thinking I set myself up for that. I can mix some records. So the recording aspect, I'm going to learn along the way, but mixing records is kind of hopefully the next step. And then even sooner, let's hope that concerts come back and we can just go on tour. Because that's really what I want. Just buy us a hippie van and get the heck out of here. So who knows what's next, but I just, take a lot of risks and go for what makes you feel good. And that's music. So anything I can do to stay in it, it's worth the risk.
Perfect. I'd like to thank Vanessa for being on the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or a guest that you'd like to hear on the show, send us an email, allaboutthesongpodcast@gmail.com. Our website for past episodes is www.allaboutthesongpodcast.com. If you are out and about, I hope you check out the audio of this podcast. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify. Anywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. And if you are listening on audio, we've made the jump to video. This is our 5th episode where you can see the visuals. So check us out on the Sounds Like Songs Network, which is a YouTube channel. Our sister podcast is Everything But the Song by the excellent Tal Weisman. And he has released 5 episodes. They are absolutely fantastic. They feature the outside life of the artist. And I think really what's happened is that you get the real inside scoop as to who the artists that you love truly are. And I think it really connects you with their music more than anything. So be sure to check out both those podcasts. All About the Song comes out every Tuesday. Everything But the Song comes out every Thursday. So stay safe, wash your hands. And for Vanessa Vai, I'm Michael McDonnell. Episode 112 of All About the Song is in the books, and we'll see you next week.